Hey guys, what's going on? James here. In today's video, we're going to be talking about 5 NFL free agents that the Buccaneers should sign this upcoming free agency period that starts on Monday. So without further ado, let's get started. No jacket today, you'll see why. And before we get started with my official list of the 5 guys that I want the Tampa Bay Buccaneers to sign in this upcoming free agency period, I have a few honorable mentions that I want to mention. So the first guy I want to talk about real quick, Russell Shepard, former Tampa Bay Buccaneers special teams ace, pretty much a very solid team leader for this team formerly. After he left the Buccaneers, he really didn't do a whole lot while he was getting some pretty decent money, so I feel the Buccaneers can get him back on a relatively cheap deal, and he can continue to do the things that he did really good for the Buccaneers in the past. So I feel that he would just be an awesome special teams option, and you know, he can also be a backup wide receiver as well and do some solid things in the passing game as well. You also then have former Arizona defensive lineman Robert Nkemdiche and Rodney Gunter. Both these guys played for Todd Bowles and for Bruce Arians. Obviously, Robert Nkemdiche, he's a former first-round draft pick, so I feel that he will definitely get a visit with the team. His price tag might be a little bit too high, but at worst, both these guys I feel could be very solid rotational type of pieces, and maybe one of them ends up starting a little bit down the line. Who knows? But I feel like they could be very solid depth pieces for this team, and if they don't cost too much, I think you do pull the trigger on a couple of those deals. You then have cornerback E.J. Gain of the Cleveland Browns. Very good man-to-man corner in my opinion. He doesn't really have any connections with the teams. The only reason I put him on my list in particular is because I wanted him this past offseason, and I want him this current offseason. He went off to the Cleveland Browns. I really hope he gets a visit with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Hopefully with this new coaching staff, a few things change, but you know, you never know, so we're just going to have to wait and see. You then have linebacker Quan Alexander. I didn't put any guys that the Buccaneers should re-sign on this list, say like Adam Humphries, Quan Alexander, or anybody else who are formerly of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So Quan Alexander, he goes in the honorable mentions section. They should really re-sign Quan Alexander. You then have cornerbacks Daquise Dennard and Kevin Johnson. Both these guys are in very similar situations. Former first-round draft picks. Both of these guys very solid man-to-man corners, still relatively young at the age of 27. Both Dennard, Johnson, and Gaines are all in kind of the same group as me. I wanted to put at least one of them on this list, but I decided to go with a different cornerback, so they're all in the honorable mentions here. But without further ado, let's get started on the actual list. Coming in at number 1, now I know I just named a lot of really good cornerbacks, but I feel this guy could be a relatively cheap option and kind of be an underrated option as well. It is former Green Bay Packers cornerback Bashaud Breeland. Now, prior to being with the Green Bay Packers, Bashaud Breeland was actually with the Washington Redskins, where he actually did some very good work for the defense and was actually very much getting lined up to have a pretty darn nice payday, but unfortunately, some setbacks with an injury he had suffered came up. He was actually very close to signing a deal with the Carolina Panthers this past offseason. However, things fell through. He wasn't ready to play or train or anything like that. He was dealing with injuries. He did not pass a physical, I believe was what the story was, and he did not sign a deal with the Carolina Panthers. After really struggling to find a new team to sign with, he eventually settled with the Green Bay Packers and put up a pretty decent season, all things considered. I still like to believe that his injury might have hampered him a little bit, so I feel if you can get him at a reasonable contract and he is able to come back fully healthy, you could potentially get a really nice steal here and a really nice addition to your secondary. He fits pretty much exactly what Todd Bowles wants to do for this upcoming Buccaneers defense, so I think that he could be a really nice depth piece at the absolute worst, and at the absolute best you have a pretty decent starting guy who's a very versatile type of cornerback as well. So you pair him up with a guy like Carlton Davis and a guy like Vernon Hargreaves, and you'd have a pretty nice situation. I almost put Morris Claiborne on this list, and I was going to put him in the honorable mentions, but I feel that so many people have talked about Morris Claiborne coming to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I wanted to switch things up a little bit, so I decided to go with Bashaud Breeland from the Green Bay Packers. He is number 1 on my list. Coming in at number 2, and I've cheated here a little bit on numbers 2 and number 4 for the types of guys that I want to join this team, is running backs T.J. Yeldon and Spencer Ware. Why did I put both of these guys on this list? Because I feel they're very similar players, very balanced running backs who I just quite frankly love a lot. I know that Bruce Arians has said that he loves Peyton Barber, that he loves Ronald Jones, and this, that, and the other, but I still feel the Buccaneers should add kind of an insurance-y type of option at the running back position. With how much of attention that's going to be at the top of this running back free agency board, with with guys like Le'Veon Bell, Tevin Coleman, among others, I feel that you could slip in a pretty nice deal of getting a guy like Spencer Ware or TJ Yeldon. Both these guys have been pretty underutilized in their respective offenses, both in Kansas City for Spencer Ware and for Jacksonville with TJ Yeldon. These guys haven't really gotten much of a solid opportunity for either one of their teams. Whenever they did get their opportunities, they did a pretty decent job, and they're very balanced, like I said, very decent power, very decent receiving ability, and just overall great elusiveness and great vision. So I feel signing one of these guys will solidify your running back room and really have an insurance option in case things don't work out with Ronald Jones or Peyton Barber, be it with an injury or just lack of production or whatever have you. I feel these guys would be pretty solid additions to any running back situation, and that's why I put them on my list. Next guy I want to talk about is another former Arizona Cardinals player, and this guy, he's had a little bit of an unfortunate circumstances happen to him as of late. It is actually former edge defender from Arizona, Marcus Golden. Now, the thing that I like about Marcus Golden is kind of what I said about Robert Nkemdiche and Rodney Gunter, is this guy, at the absolute worst, could be a rotational type of player. Obviously, the Buccaneers defense is going to go through some changes, and they need to get a little bit more of hybrid type of defenders, both as edge rushers and as linebackers. So you really kind of expect guys like Carl Nassib and Jason Pierre-Paul to kind of fit that hybrid type role. But Marcus Golden, he's been doing it since the beginning, and he's actually had some pretty decent success with it. Back in 2016, he had his breakout year with 12.5 sacks, playing in a rotational type of role. So I feel even if he is in a rotational type of role like he could be with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, he could still be insanely successful for this team. The big problem becomes his injuries. The past 2 years, Marcus Golden, he's had a lot of problems with injuries, which I feel is a very unfortunate thing, but you could spin it as a little bit of a positive thing as well, because unfortunately the NFL is a business, and I could see a lot of teams getting a little bit wary of Marcus Golden and saying, well, we don't know what's going on with his injury situations, and that might drive his price tag definitely down a great deal. So I could definitely see him, much like Robert Nkemdiche, getting a visit with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and I could see an offer coming up 100%. And if the Buccaneers did get him, at the absolute worst, they have a rotational type of guy who can contribute in very decent ways. At the absolute best, you get the 2016 version of Marcus Golden, which was an absolute beast. So, you can never have too many good defensive linemen, and I feel that Marcus Golden, he could be a really awesome addition to this brand new front seven that the Buccaneers are forming. Number 4, again, I cheated a little bit, and I've talked about these two guys a ton on the channel as of late. It is wide receivers John Brown and J.J. Nelson. Now, what can I say that I haven't said already? Both these guys, former Bruce Arians wide receivers. Bruce Arians has a ton of love for John Brown. I'm a little bit cautious about signing John Brown because his price tag has been expected to be up in the $6 million range, and if we weren't willing to give Adam Humphries, probably $8 million, we're probably not going to be willing to give John Brown $6 million, especially considering, all the different types of guys we're going to have to end up paying and the limited cap space that the Buccaneers have. I could see it getting kind of difficult to sign a guy like John Brown. Maybe he would take less money to come to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I personally would sign John Brown to maybe a $4-5 million deal, but I'm really biased against building up wide receiver depth. That's just me. I would probably have to guess that J.J. Nelson would be the more realistic option out of the two, and obviously I've talked about J.J. Nelson before. That guy's just been an absolute speed demon for the Arizona Cardinals in the past. Same with John Brown to a certain degree, but either one of these guys, they'd be a pretty darn good addition to this wide receiver core that is going to be lacking in a little bit of talent, especially if Deshaun Jackson and Adam Humphries both go. So I feel that you're going to have to re-bolster up that wide receiver core. Bringing in guys like J.J. Nelson and John Brown would go a long way in keeping that wide receiver core really, really good, and they would be very welcomed additions. I expect both of them to get visits. How these numbers shake out and how these contract negotiations shake out is anybody's guess, but it should be an interesting thing to keep tabs on. Finally, number 5, it's, you guys already know who it is. It's Tyrann Mathieu, safety of the Houston Texans. He was the first guy I put on this list, okay? Now, what can I say about Tyrann Mathieu? I've made videos galore talking about Tyrann Mathieu, but I'll say it again for everybody in the back. Tyrann Mathieu was Bruce Arians' one of his favorite players that he has ever coached. Well, that's step one. Step two, it fits a need that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers have. I know a lot of people have said, well, Jordan Whitehead, MJ Stewart, Andrew Adams, and those guys are really good, but I feel if you have the opportunity and the chance to get a safety of the caliber of Tyrann Mathieu in a very unique and probably golden situation like the Buccaneers are in right now in terms of the safety market, I think you go for it, because yes, all those guys are very nice, but the thing I like about Tyrann Mathieu is he just doesn't play safety. He plays a little bit of cornerback as well. He has played slot cornerback in the past, which has been a little bit of a struggle for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, especially given Vernon Hargreaves' injuries. So if the Buccaneers truly want to go with the route of having Vernon Hargreaves play as a _1 or #2 cornerback, you could have a lineup of Vernon Hargreaves at the 1, Carlton Davis at the 2, and then Tyrann Mathieu as your slot cornerback, and that would be insanely appealing to me, and I think it would be appealing to a lot of you guys as well. In terms of his overall leadership and ability, I think that it would be doing wonders for this relatively young secondary. A lot of these guys are 25 years old or younger, even 24 years old or younger. Tyrann Mathieu coming in at 27 years old, he'd probably be one of the older veteran-y type guys for this defense right away. So I figure I would expect him to take a leadership role in that secondary immediately and kind of do a really good job of teaching this young secondary all about Todd Bowles and Bruce Arians' new defense that is going to be implemented. And then finally, his contract value might not be as high as some people think it is, because this safety class in free agency is absolutely loaded, guys. You have Earl Thomas, you have Landon Collins, you have so many amazing safeties that are going to command so much money that could drive Tyrann Mathieu's price tag down a little bit. If you can sign him to a 3 or 4 year deal paying him $7-8 million, I think that's a steal, because there's going to be a lot of guys who are going to be just as good as Tyrann Mathieu, maybe a little bit better, maybe a little bit worse, who are going to get paid couple million more dollars, maybe as much as $5 million more than possibly what the Buccaneers could get Tyrann Mathieu for. Obviously, that's not a 100% chance given, but Tyrann Mathieu loves Bruce Arians. Bruce Arians is in Tampa Bay right now. I guarantee you if Bruce Arians hadn't retired, Tyrann Mathieu would have re-signed with the Arizona Cardinals back in, a couple of years ago. So I have no doubt in my mind that Tyrann Mathieu, he's going to go into free agency. I feel like he's going to go out and really try and visit the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and see what's going on down here in Tampa Bay. But I have one more surprise for you guys here before we finish off this video. I have a bonus round. You're saying, James, bonus round? What could you be talking about? Who could be this mysterious 6th player that you want the Buccaneers to sign in this upcoming free agency? Well, I don't know if you guys have noticed, but I'm not wearing the jacket in this video. Now, I know you're saying, well, James, what does that mean? Well, I'm wearing a Bucs jersey. Whose Bucs jersey, you may be asking? Well, it's none other than Mike Glennon, former backup quarterback to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He was just recently released by the Arizona Cardinals, and I'm not crazy. They need to bring back Mike Glennon. I'm a hashtag Glennonite for life. That's going in the comments section. I feel that Mike Glennon would be the perfect backup coming back to Tampa Bay. Jason Light was ready to give him $8 million a year before he left to go to the Chicago Bears. He stunk up the joint there. He went to the Arizona Cardinals, stunk up the joint there a little bit to a certain degree, and then he came back, now he's been released and going into free agency, and I feel that he can come back to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and be productive. Darn it, he has ties to Byron Leftwich, who is the offensive coordinator in Arizona, and he was with Mike Glennon for pretty much his entire tenure in Arizona. Guys, all the pieces connect. Hashtag Glennonite, hashtag bring back Mike Glennon. I want to thank you guys so much for watching this video. Let me know any free agents that I might have missed, who you guys want the Buccaneers to sign in this upcoming free agency, down in the comments section below. Thank you so much for watching this video. Hope you all enjoyed, and as always, I'll see you in the next video or the next live stream. But until then, and as always, goodbye for now, and go Bucs. Hashtag Glennonite.